If there was a slogan for Nick, it would be scratching an entrepreneurial itch in hard to reach places. I know, it's funnier to me too. Starting from his first business at the age of 16, Nick is truly an entrepreneur at heart. Born as a farm boy, Nick has a rich heritage of entrepreneurship and a firm understanding of hard work. He has started and grown several companies and is passionate about seeing others do the same. His latest work reflects on his passion, entrepreneurship. The book 12 Seconds was written to offer small businesses some practical advice on real sustainable growth for your company. If you know Nick for his work in the tech startup world, you may be interested in his book Unfunded, which details how he started and grew Address 2 without any investment capital. Please help me welcome Nick Carter to the Spark stage.
All right, well, tonight I'm going to try and drag you guys into a raging political debate that none of you probably really care that much about. So how's that for an introduction? It's a debate, though, the people that are in it and are like embroiled in it, on both sides, of course, they think that they're right. And they think that they are saving mankind. That, like, if they end up on the wrong side of history, that we're all doomed and humankind will end. They also happen to, and like in most debates, they talk to each other as though the other side is stupid, or worse, malicious, like whatever they are doing to end mankind, they're doing it on purpose or through some kind of conspiracy. And it has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. It's got nothing to do with the Donald's taxes. It's got nothing to do with Hillary's emails. It's probably never even going to come up in a presidential debate. What I want to drag you into a little bit tonight is the ideological and political divide between big farmers and small farmers. Between big ag and small ag, because, like I said, you probably don't care that much, which allows us to have this emotionless, outside perspective on a debate, because I'm going to challenge you to think about how you debate about the things that you really do care about. All right? So to begin with, this farm that you see on the left is usually described as a factory farm. Which is not necessarily a bad term for it. What they've done is they've taken the lessons of the Industrial Revolution and they have applied it toward food production. So what we do here is we've got, 10 to 100,000 chickens in one barn where mechanically and automatically they are fed and they are watered, and then eventually they are mechanically and automatically slaughtered and turned into meat, and it's wonderfully efficient. We can do this same thing with cattle, by the way. We can do it with hogs. We can do it with fish. If you've ever had the chance to go up I-69, you'll see, or 65, Fair Oaks Farms. It is a factory dairy farm where they bring the cattle out, they put them on this like conveyor belt or sometimes a carousel, and a machine actually reaches out and it grabs them by the teat, which is not going to become a hot mic scandal. That's actually the name for it, trust me. It's a technical term. It's the teat where, and at these farms, milk flows like a river, okay? It's flowing out of there in volumes you cannot even imagine. As you drive down the interstate from here toward Fair Oaks Farms, you're going to pass corn and soybeans, and I want you guys to realize that that's actually not food. That is a very ingenious biological mechanism to mine minerals out of the soil and then encapsulate it in this little thing called a corn kernel, which is very convenient for transportation to the factory, where it can be turned into things such as fibers, fuel, and other such material goods, okay? Now, as I give you that description, some of you are already thinking in your mind that's kind of a negative description of factory farming, and so it seems rather easy to figure out which side of this debate maybe Nick is on. But the first thing I want you guys to realize is that I've said nothing negative about factory farming. The reason this sounds like a negative description to you is because it doesn't align with your historical values of what a farm ought to be. And whenever we hear something described that at first does not align with whatever our historical values say that it should be, we think that it's negative. But the reality is that if it weren't for this farmer on the left, we would be in a world of hurt. Or the world would look radically different. See, in the United States, we actually are not threatened anymore, ostensibly, by one of the things that has threatened every society and has plagued all kinds of cultures throughout the history of man, and that's famine. In this country, for nearly a century, no one has ever woken up and wondered, will there be enough food for me to eat? Now, we have things called food deserts. We have food security issues. We have food access issues that people are trying to solve, and that's a real thing. But I want to put it into perspective, because what we call a food security issue or a food access issue or a food desert is a place where they have an overabundance of cheap and unhealthy food, which isn't great, but it's not the same thing as starving to death. In this country, there is an abundance of food. That is to say that nobody who lacks access to food, is it because our farmers just couldn't actually produce enough for them to be able to have any? And that is a thing to marvel at, and that is not a thing for us to actually dismiss very quickly. And I have to tell you, it's a result of the farmer on the left. The farmer on the right, however, is the farmer that more closely aligns with what your historical values of farming ought to be. The farmer on the right runs a small farm, okay? It's more organic, it's more quaint. He doesn't have rivers of biological refuse, sludge of manure and urine flowing off of his farm into nearby watersheds, okay? His interaction with the soil is more of a ecological balance. It's not so much of a mining and extraction of minerals from the soil. And it's also worth mentioning that the farmer on the right, the food that he's producing, those chickens are going to taste better. They will be healthier. They will have more nutrient density to the meat and to the proteins. And statistically, the likelihood of actually contracting any kind of foodborne illness from food that comes from one of these farms is way, way, way lower. Now, when I describe that, it sounds like, well, clearly that's going to be the side that Nick is on in this debate. It's not really the point. And to be honest with you, I have to tell you that what's the one thing we all know about small farms and local food and organic food? It's expensive. Exactly. See, there's no farmers markets in poor communities. And one of the things that the big ag camp will tell you and remind you, and they are right, is that you cannot feed a world of 7 billion people, or it's very difficult to, with inefficient and economically disadvantageous farming practices. So what that means is that if we were to actually all go back to Mayberry, we would have to either radically slow our population growth or decrease the population size, which is a very sanitized way of saying let some folks starve to death. All right? So there's the debate. There it is. It's teed up for you. I've brought you into the debate. Now you understand it briefly. And just like any argument, there's two sides, and I'm not really going to defend one side against the other. What I want to be able to do now is use this as a safe example as we look at debates and how we debate and what we should be debating about. So for starters, just as I tee this up, in like a 6-minute introduction, you guys have already been able to solve a lot of the problems, right? You've figured out, hey, why don't we just merge the two, right? Like, let's not throw out all of the baby with the bathwater. Let's not throw out any of the the industrial revolution stuff, but maybe we can learn some stuff from the small farmers, and we can kind of blend some components, and we can have a more environmentally friendly farming, and we can have healthier food, and we can also do it in an efficient way, and we won't have like a lack of food supply and stuff like that. Isn't that a good idea? It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Now, why don't we try and apply that in some of our other hotly debated political topics, like voter ID laws? Because in that situation, you either have a completely racist bigot who doesn't want minorities to be able to vote, or you have these like lying, cheating bastards who are just trying to steal the vote. That's the only options, though. It's the only way it could go. Another one that you guys have probably already figured out, another thing you guys probably already know is that, like, it's not like in 1948, some farmer named Ned was sitting in his parlor and he's like, you know what? The heck with 10 chickens. We're going to put 10,000 in a barn. What are you going to do with all the poop, Ned? We're just going to shovel it down in the river. That sounds like a great idea. Let's go build that barn, Ned. That's not how we got to factory farming. The other thing you need to realize is that the negative outcomes that you fear of your opponents in any kind of debate, that's not the motivation that's driving them to make their individual decisions. Individual decisions are not made toward those negative outcomes that you fear. You can realize that when we sit here and look at this debate about big ag versus little ag. What if I were to talk to you about gun laws? I mean, for starters, you need to realize that people who advocate for higher and stricter gun control are not actually desiring to seize your weapons. But conversely, people who support the NRA are not directly responsible for, nor are they happy when criminals find their way into owning weapons. That's something that we have to be okay with, because individuals are not driven by the negative outcomes. They're not villainized by advocating for the negative outcomes that you fear. What do individuals use to make their decisions? Their individual needs. Okay? Farmer on the right is not out there gathering eggs from his happy, organic, roaming, free-range chickens to prove a point. And the farmer on the left, he's not planting acres and acres and acres of corn to win an argument. These guys are trying to make a living. These guys are trying to pay the mortgage, which means that in the farming debate, which I'm embroiled in, we have to get better at discussing the positive outcomes that we desire without condemning the people who farm in a different way than we do. When it comes to other debates, it does mean that monikers like, now I'm going to get real, baby killer is not helpful. And that our country's not led by tyrants. And that you're not opposed by bigots and misogynists and homophobes and racists. And that pro-life advocates do not hate women any more than gay activists hate Christians or anything like that. And I bring this up because I want to warn you, when you villainize somebody like that, it becomes easier to harm them. And if you think that I'm overreacting, barns are burning down on farms, farmers are being attacked physically, and Monsanto employees are being threatened. And I want you to think about that in a debate that you don't care that much about because of the debates that you do care about. Thank you very much.